You're more attractive than you think. No, this isn't a compliment. It's a psychological fact. And Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists of all time, left us the clues to prove it. See, when you hear attractive, your mind probably jumps to physical beauty, cheekbones, jawlines, symmetry, fashion. But Jung, he wasn't interested in surface-level appearances. He was obsessed with the soul. Jung believed that your real power doesn't come from how you look. It comes from what you radiate. And most people have no idea they're radiating anything at all. Let me explain. You walk into a room, you don't say a word, but something about you changes the air. People turn to look. They don't know why. Maybe you're not dressed to impress. Maybe you didn't even feel confident that day. But still, they notice. That's not coincidence. That's psycho-emotional magnetism. And Jung called it the unconscious projection. It's this strange truth. People aren't reacting to you. They're reacting to the parts of themselves they see in you. So when you carry a quiet strength, or a sense of curiosity, or even unresolved pain, others feel it. Not because you said anything, but because their unconscious recognizes something familiar, something alive. Jung said, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Think about that. If someone feels change just by being around you, that's attraction on a whole different level. It's not about seduction, it's about resonance. And here's the twist. Most people suppress their true nature. They wear masks, what Jung called the persona, to fit in, be liked, or feel safe. But every time you allow your real self to show, even just a little, you become magnetic. Because realness is rare. And in a world addicted to performance, authenticity is wildly attractive. Now let's go deeper. Jung believed we each have a shadow, the parts of ourselves we hide, reject, or deny. But those very parts are where the power lives. Your sensitivity, your ambition, your anger, your vulnerability, all of it. When you integrate your shadow, when you stop pretending and start embracing all that you are, you become something extraordinary, whole. And wholeness is irresistible. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real. You see, there's a reason why some people who don't fit society's beauty standards still draw others in effortlessly. It's not a trick. It's not luck. It's integration. They've done the inner work. They're aligned. They're not trying to impress. They're simply being. And here's what most people miss. You can't fake that energy. You can't manufacture it with clothes or filters or charm. People feel it in your voice, your eyes, your presence. They feel it in the spaces between your words. They feel it when you're not performing, but just being. This is what Jung meant by individuation, becoming who you really are beneath all the layers. And when you do that, you stop chasing attraction and start becoming it. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people never realize how attractive they already are. Why? Because they're too focused on the mirror and not the energy they carry into the world. They underestimate their presence. They compare, shrink, overthink. They let the outside world define what's valuable instead of looking within. But Jung reminds us, the gold you're searching for is in the place you're avoiding. Your depth, your weirdness, your contradictions, your story. That's what draws people in. Not perfection, but presence. And here's the psychological proof. So what's the psychological proof that you're more attractive than you think? Let's start with something called emotional contagion. It's a phenomenon studied in psychology where people catch the emotions of those around them without realizing it. If you feel grounded, people near you feel safe. If you're curious, people feel inspired. If you carry unresolved pain but face it with honesty, people feel seen. This isn't magic, it's neuroscience. Your brain has mirror neurons, specialized cells that literally mirror the emotional state of others. And what they reflect back isn't your outfit or your hair, it's your inner state. That means your quiet confidence, your self-acceptance, your emotional depth. They speak louder than your looks ever could. Even when you say nothing, your energy is telling a story. Now think about how Carl Jung saw the psyche. He didn't divide people into attractive or unattractive. He saw everyone as layered, symbolic, and mysterious, carrying within them the potential for magnetism if they dared to integrate the self. So, if you've been through something difficult, if you've healed or are healing, you're already radiating something most people crave, resonance. Psychologist Elaine Aron talks about this too. She studied highly sensitive people who often absorb and reflect emotional energy more deeply than others. What she found is that these individuals, while often overlooked, possess a kind of subtle charisma. They may not stand out in loud, obvious ways, but the more emotionally tuned someone is, the more magnetically they draw others in. Now think back to Jung. He taught that the unconscious is always communicating. You may not even be aware of it, but every time you enter a room, your unconscious is saying, "This is who I am, this is my truth." And others, even strangers, feel that. They feel the part of you that's been through darkness and didn't pretend it wasn't there. They feel the part of you that's weird, different, offbeat, but completely alive. They feel the part of you that's not trying to be perfect, just present. And that right there is what attraction really is. Because here's the secret no one tells you. People don't fall for looks. They fall for presence, for energy, for depth, for mystery, for how you make them feel about themselves. And if you've ever been told you're intimidating, hard to read, or different, take that as a sign. You're probably carrying something powerful that others haven't learned how to access yet. You don't need to be loud. You don't need to be liked by everyone. You don't even need to feel confident every day. You just need to become aware of what's already inside you and stop hiding it. That's where the attraction lives. In the place you forgot to look, your own story. You're attractive. Not because someone said so, but because you are the only one who can be you, and the world feels that. But if that's true, why don't you feel it? If you're thinking, okay, but I don't feel attractive. I don't walk into rooms and change the atmosphere. You're not alone. In fact, that reaction is part of the problem itself. Because here's what Carl Jung knew. The mind hides your power from you on purpose. Why? Because deep down you're scared of what it would mean to fully step into who you are. To stop pleasing, performing, shrinking. To actually take up space. You've been trained by culture, family, maybe trauma, to believe that being too much is dangerous. So you dull your light. You second-guess your intuition. You try to be safe then by being smaller. Jung called this inner saboteur the shadow. It's not evil, it's protective. But it becomes a cage when you stop questioning it. Because when you suppress your truth to fit in, you also suppress your attractiveness. Not just sexually or romantically, but energetically, socially, spiritually. Your magnetism dies when you disconnect from yourself. And ironically, that's why you can't see how attractive you are. You've normalized your gifts, your empathy, taken for granted. Your emotional intelligence, shrugged off. Your creativity, your sensitivity, your fire, muted. Because you were taught to look for value in the wrong places. But here's what modern psychology confirms, and what Jung whispered decades ago. People are drawn to authenticity, not aesthetics. Study after study shows that people rate others as more attractive when they express themselves without apology, share vulnerable stories, speak with calm certainty, not overcompensation, show compassion, not performance. This is called authentic attractiveness, and it's backed by neuroscience. When you meet someone who's deeply aligned, your brain releases dopamine. Why? Because it feels like truth, and truth is irresistible. So how do you reclaim that? Here's where Jung's work becomes more than theory. It becomes a practice. He said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Translation? Until you become aware of what you've been hiding, you won't understand what others already see in you. So start by asking, what parts of myself have I been told are too much? When do I feel most alive even if no one sees it? What qualities do I admire in others that maybe I'm afraid to own in myself? These questions don't just build self-awareness, they unlock your magnetism. Because the moment you stop chasing attraction and start living your truth, people feel it. Not just emotionally, but biologically. Your voice steadies, your posture shifts, your eyes soften or sharpen, depending on what you're channeling. And your presence, your energy signature, expands. Not because you tried to be attractive, but because you remembered you already are. But there's one final powerful piece to this puzzle, and it's the one thing that will either amplify your magnetism or block it for life. It's the relationship you have with your own reflection. Let's talk about mirrors. Not the glass ones, the human ones. Because here's the strange truth. Other people see your attractiveness more clearly than you do. Why? Because they aren't looking at you through the fog of your childhood wounds, your insecurities, or the false beliefs you've collected like scars. They see you as you are in that moment, not through the distorted lens of who you were told to be. This is what Carl Jung meant when he said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Because when you finally see yourself as others see you, not with ego but with clarity, you realize something staggering. You've been beautiful this entire time. You just weren't allowed to believe it. Think back. Has someone ever complimented a part of you that you never saw as special? Your laugh is contagious. You have a calming presence. I feel safe around you. You have such intense, soulful eyes. And what did you do? You deflected, you shrugged, maybe you laughed it off, because your inner critic, the voice you didn't choose, immediately whispered, That's not true. They're just being nice. That's not me. But here's the reality. That inner critic is not your truth. It's just a program, an old voice stuck on repeat. And every time you listen to it, you reject your own magnetism. You turn away from the mirror, just when it was starting to show you who you really are. But here's the most important part. You can retrain your perception. You can rewire the way you see yourself. Not with fake affirmations, not with forced self-love, but with radical honesty and curiosity. You begin by asking, what if the people who see something beautiful in me are right? What if my quietness is actually powerful? What if my awkwardness is just my authenticity showing? What if my depth, my fire, my scars are part of what makes me captivating? You sit with that. You feel it in your body. You breathe into the discomfort of being seen and not hiding. Because here's the paradox Jung understood. You don't find your attractiveness by looking for it. You find it by becoming whole, by reclaiming the parts of yourself you abandoned. And when you do that, you stop being a fragmented self trying to prove worth and start being a magnetic force that knows its value. And yes, people feel that. They may not always know what it is, but they'll say things like, you have something. There's just something about you. I feel drawn to you. That something isn't luck. It's alignment. And that alignment begins the moment you stop chasing beauty and start embodying truth. But before you can live in that truth, there's one more barrier to dissolve. The deepest one. It's not about how others see you. It's not even about how you see yourself. It's about whether you're willing to be fully visible, even if it terrifies you. So here it is. The deepest reason why you don't feel as attractive as you are. You're afraid of being seen, truly seen. Not just looked at, not admired from a safe distance, but seen in all your rawness, contradictions, and complexity. Because to be seen means to be vulnerable. And somewhere along the way, you learned that being vulnerable meant being judged, being rejected, being too much, being not enough. So what did you do? You built armor. You told yourself, if I can just be liked, I'll be safe. If I look the part, I'll be accepted. But here's what Jung would say. The more armor you wear, the more disconnected you become from your soul. And the soul, not the ego, is where real attraction lives. Because there's nothing more magnetic than someone who's done the inner work and still chooses to show up, scars and all. Someone who says, this is me, not the perfect version, the real one. And I'm not hiding anymore. That energy, it shakes people, not because it's loud, but because it's true. People crave truth. They are starved for it, because most of the world is playing a role. But you were never meant to play a part. You were meant to be witnessed, not for the mask you wear, but for the light you carry underneath it. And once you allow yourself to be seen, without apologizing, without shrinking, without performing, you unlock a form of attractiveness that no one can imitate. Because now you're not radiating for others. You're radiating from within. You stop trying to prove your worth. You embody it. And the people who matter. The ones who can meet you where you are, soul to soul. They find you. They feel you. Because they're not attracted to your persona. They're attracted to your presence. And this is where Jung's work becomes spiritual. He wasn't just mapping the mind. He was calling us back to the self. The whole self, the sacred self, the self you've been avoiding, but longing to become. And maybe, just maybe, that version of you has been whispering all along. You're not invisible. You're not average. You're not broken. You're just hidden. And it's time to come out of hiding. Because you don't need to become attractive. You already are. You just need to remember. You probably felt it, haven't you? Moments when something stirred inside you, something powerful, unexplainable. Maybe it was in conversation, when someone leaned in closer without realizing. Maybe it was when you were lost in your craft, or telling a story, or just sitting quietly in thought, and someone looked at you like they were seeing a whole universe behind your eyes. That's not imagination. That's your real self showing up. The you that doesn't try. The you that doesn't perform. The you that simply is. And that version of you, the one that slips out when you forget to be afraid. That's the one people fall for. That's the one the world notices. Not because you demand attention, but because your presence commands it. Carl Jung said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not a version, not a performance, not a product. You. But here's the twist. The more you become that person, the fewer people will understand you. Because most people are still trapped in masks, and masks can't recognize faces. So don't be surprised if stepping into your full presence makes some people uncomfortable. It will. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because you're reflecting back what they haven't yet faced in themselves. That's the paradox of magnetism. The more real you are, the more others feel. And what they feel may not always be comfort. It might be longing. It might be awe. It might be intimidation, but it will always be real. And you'll start to notice something subtle but profound. People will open up around you without knowing why. Strangers will linger in your presence just a little longer. Eyes will lock with yours for a few seconds too long. Conversations will get deeper faster. You'll walk into a room and feel the atmosphere shift. Not because of how you look, but because of who you are becoming. That is power. Not loud, performative power, but deep soul-level gravity. And you don't have to earn it. You don't have to chase it. You don't even have to believe in it fully yet. You just have to stop resisting it. Because your attraction isn't something outside of you. It's not in the makeup, the muscles, the charm, the clothes. It's in the parts of yourself you've buried. It's in your story. The full, messy, brilliant story. And the moment you stop apologizing for that story, you become someone unforgettable. But here's what most people miss. Your wounds don't make you less attractive. They make you human. And when you own them, instead of hiding them, they make you magnetic. Think about it. You've been taught that your pain, your past, your breakdowns are things to be fixed, hidden, or glossed over. Smile through it. Pretend it never happened. Stay positive. But the people who leave the deepest impact, the ones you can't stop thinking about, they don't just show strength. They show scars. Why? Because something in you recognizes their courage, and courage is captivating. Carl Jung believed that to become whole, we must descend into the depths, the parts of ourselves we've rejected, feared, or avoided, not just to understand them, but to integrate them. What does that mean? It means the things you're most afraid people will see. Your insecurity, your grief, your shame, your sensitivity are not flaws. They are portals. They are the doorways to authenticity, to empathy, to emotional resonance. And here's the twist. The more you face your darkness, the lighter you emit. It sounds paradoxical, but it's psychologically true. People who have suffered and processed their suffering often radiate a kind of presence that can't be faked. You feel safe with them. You feel seen. You feel something ancient in their energy. Like they've walked through fire and are no longer afraid to stand in their truth. That energy? That's not charisma. That's integrated humanity, and it's wildly attractive. So if you've ever been told you're too sensitive, what if that sensitivity is your superpower? If you've been called too intense, what if that intensity is what wakes people up? If you feel like your past makes you damaged, what if it actually makes you relatable, real and rooted? We live in a world of masks, but your willingness to show up unmasked creates space for real connection. That's what attraction truly is. Not manipulation, not aesthetics, but resonance. And resonance is born from truth, from depth, from story. So instead of asking, am I attractive? Ask this. Am I present with myself? Am I showing up honestly? Am I living from my core or from my conditioning? Because the people you're meant to attract, in love, friendship, creativity, or purpose, they're not looking for a polished version of you. They're looking for you, and they'll only find you when you stop hiding. So here you are, still wondering if you're attractive, still waiting for that undeniable external proof. A look, a comment, a reaction, something to finally confirm what you've quietly hoped all along. But deep down, you already know. You've always known. You've just been talked out of it. Talked out of it by comparison, by rejection. By childhood memories where you felt invisible, by lovers who didn't know how to see you, by a culture that defines beauty with a checklist instead of a heartbeat. But that doesn't mean your light disappeared. It means your mirror was cracked, and no one ever taught you how to see through the cracks. Here's the truth, not the soft feel-good truth, but the deep one. You don't need to look a certain way to be attractive. You need to live a certain way, present, connected, unapologetic, rooted. Because when someone walks into a room and they're at peace with who they are, when they carry their history without shame, when their eyes don't beg to be seen, but invite others to feel safe, that's power. That's magnetism. And it's not something you buy, it's something you become. Carl Jung once said something most people have never heard. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, but the price is the shedding of everything you are not. Let that sink in. The privilege is becoming. The price is letting go. Letting go of the roles, the masks, the people-pleasing, the pretending, the chasing. Think about that. Think about the woman who stopped dulling her joy because someone once told her she laughed too loud. Think about the man who always held back his tears until one day he let them fall in front of someone he trusted and was loved more for it. Think about the artist who hid their weird ideas, their strange colors, their wild thoughts, until they finally said, "Screw it, this is me." And their work started to change lives. That's what it means to become visible. That's what it means to shed what you're not. And that's the root of real attractiveness. You don't have to be the most confident person in the room. You just have to be the most authentic. And authenticity doesn't look one way. It can be soft or fiery, introverted or radiant, calm or bold. What matters is that it's true. Because truth doesn't need to perform. It radiates. And when you start to live from your truth, when you reclaim your story instead of hiding it, when you meet your own eyes in the mirror without flinching, that's when people start to see it too. They won't always know what it is, but they'll feel it. They'll feel you. And if you're watching this right now, if this message found you, it's not just a coincidence. It's a sign. You're not just attractive. You're powerful. You're becoming. And you're not meant to do it alone. So here's what I invite you to do right now. Subscribe, not just to this channel, but to this path. The path of becoming, of unmasking, of integrating your story, your shadow, your light. Because this channel isn't about surface-level self-help. It's about soul-level awakening. It's about stepping into the parts of yourself that you've been taught to fear and realizing they're your gift. So if something stirred in you, a memory, a truth, a sense of recognition, follow that. Join this journey. Not because you're broken, but because you're finally ready to stop pretending you are. Subscribe and start seeing yourself as you were always meant to be seen. The world doesn't need a more perfect you. It needs a realer you. And that's who we're becoming together.